welcome you again to this podcast, Global Leadership Insight. With me here today is Zachary Cochran. He is the founder of Cochran Coaching LLC, and he's been serving a lot of international organizations and business leaders, young professionals across board. I have the privilege and opportunity of having Zachary here. Zachary, you're welcome.
Thank you so much, Faishola. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you bringing me back onto your podcast.
Yes, it's necessary because professionally, you've done a lot. A lot of people want to learn from you. Starting your coaching business over time. How has it been so far?
I'd say it has been, like many times in entrepreneurship, a wild ride. It has been wonderful. It has been filled with challenges, and the challenges keep changing throughout the journey as well. I started as a coach unofficially, let's say in 2010. I started coaching some of my classmates while I was still in college with the intention of supporting them through this business strategy class that I was the teacher's assistant for. And I really enjoyed sort of mentoring them and supporting them through that process. And outside of college, I graduated in 2010. I ended up going on to help friends find jobs. And I enjoyed that so much.
Wow.
After about 7 years of that, while I was working my normal jobs, I ended up saying I should just start my own business and be a career coach full time.
Wow.
So that's what transitioned me into the field of coaching in September 2017. I left my day job into this full time with, my life savings in my, bank account, which wasn't much at the time. And I ended up saying, okay, well, let's go and let's see how far I can go with it. And my goal was, after I had, grown up here in Maryland in the Anne Arundel County area, I had lived in New York City for 11 years, college, and I stayed for working in those careers. I said, can't pay the Manhattan rent prices as a startup entrepreneur. I'm going to move back home. I actually, lived with family for a year, 2 years after that, and just to keep my expenses low. And that was how I got started. Was okay, well, let me get that launched. And I really didn't even know what entrepreneurship was at the time. So obviously it's been a whole journey since then in the last 7-8 years, but that's kind of what got me to this space and back into Maryland, and now ultimately here at the Maryland Innovation Center where we're recording this.
Wow, fantastic. I mean, that sounds very inspiring. And I want you to share with us the inspiration behind your transitioning from your 9-to-5 job to being an entrepreneur fully. Yeah. Because I see people finding it so difficult to transition. Yeah. But since you have experienced it, it's a good opportunity for people to learn from you, how you did that transition.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll just say about that I had some role models in that regard. I had family members who have been entrepreneurs, so that helps a lot when you've seen it your whole life growing up. Another piece of it was I was in a job that was paying me a nonprofit wage in New York City, and I had to live with too many roommates in order to actually make that work. And so I said, well, you know what? I'm actually risking more by staying in this current career path that I'm in than actually if I was to leave that and bet on myself and start from scratch. So ironically, people talk about how risky it is to become an entrepreneur. I felt the risk was actually too great not to try this at that stage in my career where I was late 20s. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was like, I could probably make a whole lot more money from this to be able to move back to New York City, live sustainably, because ultimately I wasn't on a sustainable path. And I wasn't building, wealth. I was just barely getting by on a nonprofit salary at the time. So, that, and it's an emotional experience, right? So when you start your own business, as you know, right? For me, I gave myself a 9-month pre-launch window. Wow. I said, hey, I've been in this job. And at the time, it was great. I did enjoy managing a museum in New York City. Wow. But a large part of the role became 60-hour weeks, back to back, managing a gift shop during the holiday rush. And I was like, this is I've done this 2 years in a row. I don't want to do this a third year. It just wasn't a good fit for me. And so I said, all right, I got to leave. I'm going to give them a heads up. I think I gave them 6 weeks notice, not 2 weeks notice, because I was in a manager role. Wow. And I wanted them to have time to hire someone for the next holiday rush. And I said, all right, I'm going to do this. And I ended up talking to some people. A mentor in particular gave me a skills assessment. That was helpful for me in trying to figure out what my skills were. Ironically, it had a career guide section, and the number one suggested career, it was like, you'd be a good career counselor.
Wow.
So I was like, well, that's validating. This is great. And then that mentor also helped me actually connect with one of his clients, and I did some coaching. I would
Fantastic.
a trip down on my manager's schedule. I didn't have to work Mondays because the museum was closed, so I'd coach people on Mondays. Take the bus back up to New York City, and the ultimate experience of it was I was both excited, thrilled, and terrified at the same time of going into entrepreneurship and doing this on my own. And ultimately, I did make the leap, and then once you make the leap, it's all about surviving until you're profitable and you're growing a thriving business. And that itself was a long journey.
Wow.
Yeah, that's been a big part of the journey so far.
That's good. And since you are mentoring people, especially those that are coming up, in business, how has the experience, especially the feedback you're getting over time from your clients? Yeah.
So I like to end every coaching session, and I've done about 200 of them in the last year alone.
Fantastic.
So if that gives you a sense, over 7-8 years, right? I haven't actually calculated all of that, but I would say easily, more than 500, possibly as many as 1,000 or more. So I've gotten, a significant experience over time. And every session I like to end with 2 questions. First question, just to get a sense of their takeaway, what did they learn? So I'll ask, what did you learn or find valuable? Right? And from that, oftentimes people reflect and they'll say, well, this was valuable to me. I can't think of a time that I've heard someone respond to that question with well, nothing was valuable. And I look for that too, because I'm like, well, if this truly wasn't a valuable experience, I'm sorry, it wasn't a valuable experience. I don't want to charge you for that. If you didn't get any value from this conversation that we had for the last hour, then don't pay me.
That's true.
That's fine. So yeah, finding that value every time. And then of course the other question is just, what do you want to do as a response to this session that you've had, just to make sure that it's actionable and they're taking steps and it doesn't just stay in this was a good conversation, but it continues to be something that they act on and move forward, do things based on what they've realized through the clarity or confidence that they've gained.
Wow, great, fantastic. And I heard you mentioned professional support, professional development you're providing
for the leaders.
For leaders.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yes,
business
thank you.
leaders. Yeah.
Exactly. So with that, the intent or the express mission that I had as I launched the business was to support the undersupported. That was me. That was my experience. I didn't have a lot of mentorship or good guidance when it came to launching my career. And I thought, wow, I can't go in a time machine for myself, but what if I could essentially help the next generation coming after me to start as leaders first of themselves, and then ultimately as leaders of their communities, leaders of their teams, leaders of their region even. So that leadership looks like, for me right now, I've tried to focus primarily on young professionals who are in their 20s or 30s.
Fantastic.
And that's, again, my passion that's driving that. And my hope and my vision for my company is to see that by the year 2030, maybe as early as 2028, that I would be responsible for providing access to monthly coaching services for 500 young professionals every month. And that's obviously not something I can personally pull off with one-on-one coaching sessions. So I've been changing my model to be more of a group coaching model. So right now I'm in the process of soft launching a program that will officially launch on September 5th, 2025. And that is a leadership development program that's heavy on the group coaching. It includes some elements of training and then even guest speakers. And that's something that will launch again in the next month here, but also I'm hoping that it will be not like a one-time thing or something where people will show up for a few months. The intent is that we're lifelong learners.
Exactly.
And there aren't enough spaces and contexts for us to continue with the same learning community. We graduate from college, right? We graduate from our workplace, we leave our work, we lose our access to our colleagues there who maybe we had professional development stuff. So you're sort of on your own when it comes to professional development, especially as a young professional. As an executive or as a business owner, right, we have access to coaches, sales coaches, executive coaches, or business coaches, and that's great. and we can pay for those. But as young professionals, they don't always have access to that in a sustained way. So by creating this program, this is like the flagship service that I'm working toward making, 50 to 90% of my company's revenue. And it's to have young professionals have access, whether they're at the young, the individual contributor level where they're just entry level, or whether they're managing people and they have some direct reports and they need to figure out how to do that better. And in both cases, if you're a good leader of yourself, that's going to allow you to manage others and manage yourself well.
That's important.
So that's to say that's the primary focus for me right now. But I could tell you about the business coaching that I'm doing. I could tell you about the executive coaching in terms of business leaders. I'm not really age specific. I love working with people who are learners, who want to lead themselves and their organizations. And I expect that as I continue to grow in my career and age over time, I'll probably delegate more and more of the coaching of young professionals by other young professional coaches. I'm on that weird cusp of sort of mid-career, but not really yet. So I'm still kind of technically a young professional. And I imagine in 10 or 20 years, I'll be doing a lot more coaching of executives, business leaders, and so forth. I do find today that other folks who are in that we'll call it 35 to 45 years old range, especially working with me, because there aren't a whole lot of younger coaches who've been doing this for almost a decade. And so I have the experience. I also have that sort of generational mindset that comes with millennials, and just a different kind of energy. And I show up a little differently than when most coaches who are typically 50s or 60s or even 70s and 80s show up. You'll get different things. So you'll get more experience from them, but coaching in its best form doesn't necessarily require just your experience or life experience. It requires that you're able to ask insightful questions and help people focus on themselves and the problems they want to solve.
Yeah, I mean, you're really building a strong community of professionals. I mean, those that could get themselves established and then focus more on growth. And I see you've done a lot in that regard.
Thank you.
And that's so commendable. And I want to also ask this, because I heard when you're talking about some of those programs you have lined up, and so I want to ask if you will have one or two things to say to those that are at the crossroad in terms of how do I get a mentor, or how do I get mentored? Because I've seen a lot of people that are in situations where they find it difficult to even know what to do. But they have fantastic ideas, they are very much equipped, but they don't really know how. They need some kind of support. So how do you want to use this platform to tell them that there is always opportunity for growth, and there's always opportunity to tap into mentorship?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and one I'm happy to speak to, because I think that when we run into the question of needing support or mentorship, we're oftentimes not quite creative enough and not quite bold enough. And those are things that, and we might not have the right mindset around it as well. So in terms of creativity, right, now with the advent of generative AI, ChatGPT, right, you can brainstorm, how do I find a mentor? And that's really simple. And you might find that you ask for 10, suggestions on how to get a mentor, and you hate 9 of them, but there's one that really resonates with you, right? So that would be an easy, free starting place that I would recommend anyone do, is just, put in a prompt into your favorite generative AI tool. Say, how can I find a mentor? Give me 10 ways. And that probably will be enough to get you started right there. Now, I did mention there's sort of an awkwardness to it as well, because even when you maybe identified who you would like to be a mentor, maybe they're in your mind way out of your league, or they'd never want to talk to you. And that kind of goes to the awkwardness of you needing the courage to step up and ask. I did this. I had a mentor who I ended up knowing was a business leader. He was the CEO of a 300-person organization. I was I'm way too small time for him. He's not going to have time a day for me. So I'm not even paying him. I'm not even on his team, right? Why would he mentor me? But I asked to meet with him. He graciously said yes. Wow. I showed up 20 minutes early for the breakfast. I ended up, really engaging with him. And then I just had a very clear ask. I was like, hey, no problem if you don't want to do this, but I'm really looking for mentorship. Would you be open to it? And he said, you know what? Follow me.
Wow.
And we ended up driving back to his office. He pulled about 6 or 7 books off of his shelf and said, you know what? Read these and then let's schedule another breakfast.
Great.
And like, that was a great move because one, he vetted me and said, you know what, hey, if you're not a learner, you're not willing to do the work and the reading, like, you know, we're not gonna have another conversation. That's fine. This will be a one and done for me. So he kind of like gave me an off ramp if I wasn't willing to do the work. And I did do the work. I read the books. We scheduled another meeting and continued. And now it's been, I want to say 6 or 7 years that we've been in a mentorship relationship that's cultivated into a friendship. And beyond that, even some sort of partnership. Like I'm on his website now as one of his team members. I have a event that I co-hosted with him 3 months ago. We're looking at another one for October, but I've been helping him to build his network. And there's been more of that partnership and support. The more that we got to know each other, we became friends as well, despite there being about a 25-year-old age gap between us.
Fantastic. Wow.
So
that sounds great.
Yeah. And then like that goes to the mindset piece of like, you might say, oh, well, you're stuck in a dysfunctional belief. Maybe they'll never have time for me, right? And then it's done until you reframe that you actually have the opportunity to say, you know what, maybe he's looking to pour into people just like me. Right. And that's where, if you can start from that mindset and that place, you have a better chance of then going into and making the ask. And if they say no, it's no problem. There's other people who want to mentor. A lot of people, whether that like give back stage and age of their career, or even if they're like peer mentors, like I am or would be, you know, there's a lot of people who have that mindset and desire to care, support, and give back and to help. And so it's all about, you know, having the courage to reach out and ask one or more people and see where it goes.
I think just as you rightly said, to be successful in this area requires more on relationship.
Yeah.
And I think that has been very helpful, like you rightly said. And people also should, you know, focus on that and see how they could engage more reasonably well in terms of building strong relationship with people so that they could always, you know, benefit so much from it. Yeah. Just like it has happened in your own case.
Yeah. As a coach, you're trying to be of service to the other person. It makes it very easy to practice that on a regular basis because you don't need to be the expert. You don't have to know all of the answers. You just need to ask questions that are helpful. And, you know, that said, I didn't quite mention in my services earlier, I do wear the trainer hat. So I do have to be kind of a subject matter expert on some of that. And so there is an element of like, I've done some study. I've read 100 books in the last, 7 years since I started my business. Like there's a lot there that I've put in the time to learn, but I also don't have to like hit someone over the head with like, look at me, I'm smart. And that mindset of being of service is, I think.
Exactly. I mean, that's great. So where do you see coaching business in years to come? Like, I know a lot of things are available right now. People have access to artificial intelligence. Yeah. There's a lot of serious innovations going on. Sure. I want to ask that, where do you see coaching business going? Is it finally going to be taken over by artificial intelligence, or are we still going to be checking in one-on-one with one another? Right. So what does it look like in the future?
Yeah. So that's an excellent question, and one I have a lot of fun with. I've spent some time thinking about this, in part because I just recently redid my business plan, and I've thought about my 5-year, 10-year plan and goals, and sort of what does the future look like. I'm also, one of my assistants is currently doing research for me on like all the coaching platforms that have popped up, and there's a fair number of them at this point. The interesting thing about coaching is that it is an unregulated field. So unlike therapy, which I highly recommend to people who have not done that, especially trauma-informed therapy, I would just say that you don't need to have a license like you would as a therapist. Anyone can be a coach tomorrow by just saying, hey, I'm a coach. I'm a life coach, or I'm a that kind of coach. So it's a little bit buyer beware, and that's been the way it's been for quite some time. Also, coaching is sort of new in terms of the grand scheme, or if you look at kind of the last 100 years, I would say that it really only started to take off, based on my understanding, in the early 2000s. There was definitely some coaching, I'm sure, that happened before that in the 80s and 90s. And then, of course, you have sports coaching that goes back further than that. But in terms of professional coaching, It's fairly new, and like an organization like the International Coaching Federation, that sort of is the gold standard credentialing agency across the world, that's only been around for, I'd have to double check, but somewhere between 20 to 30 years. So that's kind of the look back. To look forward. Yeah. The look forward is to say, artificial intelligence is here to stay, and it is something that I think will beat out any and this is true in probably any industry. If you have a coach who uses artificial intelligence versus a coach who doesn't, it's kind of like, are you still on a typewriter? You have to be adaptive to the tools that exist, and it just is more effective if you have access to something like, hey, let's just brainstorm some names for your company that you're trying to create right now. Oh, great, we came up with one that you love. Okay, what about mission, vision, values, right? So they're tools that I use not necessarily every day in coaching, but like artificial intelligence has become a part of the suite of tools that I think is required for a coach if you're going to be effective in the world going forward. I know there are some coaches who are trying to actually chart that territory and figure out how to use artificial intelligence more effectively. I was recently connected with one of them who I still have to talk with, but that's a really cool idea that you would like dive more deeply into that. And then, there's still the element of we're human beings, and you're always going to feel better connected to an actual person than you would to a computer or some sort of artificial intelligence. And so I don't believe that coaching is going away, but I do believe it's being disrupted. Yeah. And I think that part of the disruption means that we'll stay harder and harder for new coaches to break in because, hey, anyone can now access coaches through the globalization. Yeah. Anyone who's willing to accept coaching for $20, $30, $50 an hour. So how do you get to like having a living wage where you're charging $200, $300, $400 a session unless you just stay in it for a long time, get lucky, find the right organizational budgets, and all that takes time and skill. So for me, I've looked at the group coaching model as a pivot to allow me to go from 6 to 7 figures because I think that by bringing, 20 clients into a room at the same time, or somewhere in that 10 to 12 range, that's kind of the ideal sweet spot per session, you might have a opportunity to get a lot more revenue, as well as people get a lot more peer support. And so I think the rise of group coaching will probably be the push for coaches because it's just not cost effective enough for you to do $30 an hour coaching sessions, which is what you get paid on a lot of these platforms based on the limited research I've seen. So artificial intelligence becomes a great tool. It's something that is causing disruption in the space. You can just, if you don't have money for a coach, hey, ChatGPT, treat me like you're an ICF certified, master level coach and ask me powerful questions, right? I'd use that prompt and like have it like, drive toward what I want to do, right? And I've even recommended that to clients who can't, or prospective clients who can't afford me. But all that to say, artificial intelligence is still specific. There's no real true generalized artificial intelligence that's equal to what a human can do. And yes, while you can get a lot of support, I would say that if you're really going for the top tier caliber support that you could be getting, you're still going to see, the top business leaders in the world accessing real coaches and probably paying 3 to 4 figures per session for that support because that's just it's just valuable. It's valuable to have that relationship over time, to talk with them. And yes, please use artificial intelligence as a supplemental tool while you're working with your coach.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, I think you agree that artificial intelligence has brought, a lot of, remodifications and stuff, a lot of progress and all that into coaching business. Yeah. And that has also helped a lot. Right. But at the same time, you agree that it's also very important to also have one-on-one engagement with people, like direct engagement, with one another. It's also very beneficial. Yep. So to conclude this session, I would just say that you have a program coming up September, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to relate that to our audience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you are in Central Maryland, I would be happy for you to join me on one of two things. I have a launch of the new Young Professionals Leadership Development Program on September 5th. It's a Friday at noon to 1. So if you're interested in coming to see that and to be a part of that launch, that would be amazing. amazing. We've soft launched it, so we have Fridays in August as well. So if you're interested, you can contact me, find me on LinkedIn, Zachary Cochran, and I'll be happy to connect with you and to invite you. Just include a personalized message so I know who you are and what you're interested in. You can also go to my website, CochranCoachingLLC.com, and schedule 15 minutes with me on a phone call or on Zoom, and that would be an option as well. And then if you're a young professional in like the Howard County area, Columbia, Maryland, or even just in generally central Maryland, I am hosting an event that I've hosted 4 times already called a Breakfast of Gratitude. This one I'm specifically inviting young professionals to, and it's just a time to network with other young professionals, to learn like from a micro lesson, for about 15 minutes, to take a moment to eat a great breakfast, to have some time to reflect and be grateful for what you're grateful for outside of, say, Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And then I do a raffle, which is fun, at the end, just to, give away a combination of books and gift cards as well. So those have been a big hit. You can look at pictures on my website. If you find my link tree and my Flickr page, that's got all the pictures for that. But those have been great events in the past. And I'm using that event partly to promote the leadership coaching, the leadership development program. So that event is Friday, September 12th at 8 to 10 a.m. So again, if you're interested, you're a young professional, let me know. I'd be happy to include you in that. But again, those are the things that are like biggest that I'm working on right now, beyond, a few other areas that are all important to the business building and revenue generation and, additional support. But yeah, young professionals are getting, the bulk majority of my attention and time right now, because that's really where the mission is and the vision is.
Oh, nice. So, that's up to you young professionals out there. You just have to connect with him and get all the resources that you need to thrive. So everything that is clicking on your heart like a question, he has the answer. So connect with him. Thank you for coming, Zachary, to this program. We're so grateful for having you. And then the conversation we had here has been very informative, and I feel a lot of people, they've learned a lot from it. And this is great. We would still want to have you back, very soon on this program, so that you could talk to young professionals about some of these experiences you've got over time. So I want to appreciate your coming.
Well, Paishola, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I feel honored that you had me on your podcast, and I'm very pleased to have had this conversation with you. Thank you for your time and your interest in learning more about my career and the services that I have. And yeah, I definitely, would love to come back if it makes sense to support you further. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, because I know you've been supporting this podcast for quite some time now. I appreciate that a lot too. We're so grateful.
You're welcome.
So that is the end of today's podcast. As soon as we'll still be getting across to you with other leaders of thoughts, leaders of businesses, young professionals, we'll be bringing them on board. Thank you for watching.